Okay, hey, this is DJ. I'm going to do my best to help you out with your scene here. So I already opened it up once before, and there were a couple things that were tricky for me, only because I don't have some of the image textures that you're using here. So I'm going to take this. I think this is the world wrap that you're using for the image outside of the window. I'm just going to turn that off, and then I'm going to change the background to just something that makes it easier for me to see. So let's use this one for now. Okay. So one thing that I'll tell you right away, I noticed that you were using these procedural textures, which is they're really cool. I do like procedural textures, but I would recommend for doing your final that you bake these out. And you can do that. I'm not sure if you know how to bake out textures, so I'll just show you like kind of quickly, I guess. Um, if you create an image, create a new one, just call this texture, make this 4K by multiplying these by 4. And then you take whatever you want to export out. So if it's this texture here, this clean concrete, or this wood flooring here, go to shader and go to emission, and you're going to pipe these into this like intermittently. So you'll put this in here and you'll view through this emission node. So the emission will go to your material output. You'll make sure that this is selected, your new texture. Go to your export, and then down in, where is it? Where's baking? Oh, we have to go to cycles for this, by the way. Go to bake, and then you're going to change the bake type to emission, emit right here. And you'll need to turn everything else off. So if I hit Control I to invert, hide everything, then you'll just bake this. And you'll want to put your samples just to 1. You don't need anything more than that, just to 1. And then you're going to hit bake. And what it should do is, let's look for a texture here. Is it will export out your texture, and you can save this, go to image, and then save. Now for me, it's coming up black because this procedural generator here isn't working for me. Not sure why. I haven't seen this one before. This Uber mapping node is probably really awesome. I've never seen this, but it's probably really cool. I've never used this before, but uh, I would recommend that if you're going for final, you'll want to do a final bake out of these textures anyway. So that's one step. You'll have a lot faster of a render, and you'll end up with less issues, especially when switching to different engines, because Eevee, Cycles, ProRender, and LuxCore all handle stuff like this completely differently. But image textures, it's like totally easy to use. So I would recommend, like, this is why I've actually gone away from using procedural creators like this, is because it works a lot in cycles and for specific builds of whatever kind of Blender session you're using. But images that are seamless, well, you basically can be used on stuff that are like versions of Blender that are like 10 years plus old. So, um, you never know what is being used inside of some of these, and some of these particular nodes may not be usable anymore in a newer build of Blender or something like that. So, if I view through here and I just look at what's here, Oh, it's on cycles. Hold on. Let's switch to Eevee. So you see it's purple. So it's really strange. Like basically whatever is going on here, I can't see what that texture is. So to make things easier, I'm just going to put in an image texture and let's see here. Let's just use this. I'm just going to quickly pipe these in just so that we have something that's there. Come on. So yeah, like obviously that wouldn't be like a final sort of image texture. I would refine something like that. But just so you know, that might be one issue that you're having is that the way it's being rendered, it may not be able to handle this. Especially if you want to move to using ProRender, you're going to need to bake out your textures before you transfer over to something else. Okay, so let's unhide everything. Now again, I don't have these, so I'm just going to use this just to work with it here. I don't know what's going outside. They're doing like wood, like tree trimming or something outside, so it's really loud. I apologize. Okay, so there's that. This seems to be working fine. There was an issue when I was jumping between a couple different, like jumping between cycles and going back and forth. This object here was not booleaning properly, and it became solid. And based on your images here, maybe that's an issue that you're running into. I don't know. So that could be something. I'm not really sure what would account for the kind of thing that you're seeing in these other things here. Let me see if I can just render this out here and see what happens. Yeah, so I'm getting this pink here because there's this whatever the cylinder is, that's what's causing that. So that's no big deal. But this looks pretty close to what we're seeing here. So this is, I think, what you would expect to see. Let's see if you're using any depth of field. You are using depth of field. So here's something that I've noticed. I have noticed that on Eevee, depth of field sucks. It does not portray correctly, and I haven't done a video on this yet because honestly, I'm not a big fan of Eevee for doing final renders unless you're doing an animation and for very specific things. So, um, your depth of field that you have selected here might cause an issue with rendering. I would try turning that off and on and see if that causes an issue. And if you find that that's a problem and you still want to do depth of field, what you can do is you can use where is it here? Filter defocus. So throw your image into here. Sorry about that. Go to find normalize. Take the depth, put it into normalize. Go and grab a color ramp. Then take that and put it into the Z down here. And what this does, it takes your Z value and it will use it to map a defocus effect on your image. So, geez, my phone is blowing up. I am so sorry. Yeah, so what you'll use is this color ramp here. Black is what's in focus. So let's say you want the table and everything back here to be more in focus. And then you want stuff in the foreground to be defocused. So you make that white. So this is probably going to look kind of weird, but let's do like that. I kind of want to make it obvious. And then use the Z scale here, and you'll pop that up to like, whatever you want. So 300 should be really defocused. So you can see that it made a defocus effect. So you can kind of use that like very slightly maybe, because it looks like you didn't have that much of a depth of field on your shot. You can use something like that to create a depth of field look for your image. So I would try that, see if the defocus is a problem, and bake out your textures so that it's not so much of an issue. The shadows that are currently being used in your settings here is probably also another thing. I wouldn't use bloom. Number one, bloom takes more time to calculate. It also will cause sometimes undesirable stuff. And then your render samples are pretty low. It might be because you were doing some test runs, and that's fine, but I would pop this up to at least 64. Right here, you see this half res trace. Remove that because you want full resolution tracing, and you can make it more accurate by popping this up to 1. The other thing here, see where it says right here, high bit depth, turn that on. Cube size, I would go 64, cascade sized 2048. And you're going to have more soft shadows by doing that, and it's going to be higher quality. Let's see, what else? So on your area light here, turn on contact shadows. And this distance here will actually change the way that these shadows are being calculated. So you can see in the preview, or as I pop it up, you can see the tracing of those shadows. So that's something that you can do. The other thing you can do is change the thickness of the shadows here to like change how it's projecting over there. The other thing, let's see here. So I think that's really what I would try to check out and see if you can do something with those ideas and see if that will help. Um, New York City. Let me just change this to something else to see if I can see if this thing is actually causing any issues. So yeah, it looks like, it looks like overall it might be a texture issue with the render engine. I've noticed that like I said, the viewport sometimes will be fine, but other things will not be. Just while I'm looking at this, and you'll have to forgive me, I don't know what your like overall skill level is and stuff like that, so you have to forgive me. This is a really nice little scene that you're building up here. I would revisit this here and unwrap this in a box form so that you can get those edges to be. Let's see, is this just a plane? It's not. I would unwrap this so you can actually see some of that cool marble effect on the side too, instead of these lines here. But maybe that's in yours, but it's just I'm not seeing it in this one for some reason. The other thing that I would really recommend is if you're going to use something else besides Eevee, use IES lights for these guys right here. I don't know if you are aware of what that is, but I'll just put one in here really quick. So point light, where'd it go? Here, let me snap to here. Okay, so snap to cursor. Oh, do not want the table. So I'll move this up here by these lamps. So, like, I mean, maybe a nighttime, geez, maybe a nighttime scene would be really neat, or something, for like an alternate snap selection to cursor. So what I like to do is put that as a spot for the moment. Change the shape down to about there, and make sure the orientation is pointed down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch to cycles because it only works in a ray tracer. And I'll keep it on CPU for right now. One note really quick, you're using the experimental stuff. And there's a reason why there's that, exclamation point. I don't think that this scene needs this, because I saw you're using some micro displacements and stuff. That will cause quite a few issues, and I don't think you need it for this scene. So I would try not using those experimental build stuff just so that you can work through this with the expected. I don't know what the best word is to use. The expected results. You know what I mean? Um, oh, it looks like you do have an irradiance volume in here. So it looks like you're already doing that. So that's fine. It's just not cached on this one. So, like I said, cycles, CPU, go to lighting, click on use nodes. And then I'm just going to get rid of this because it looks like you had that over there. I have a particular way that I work, and I never got over doing it this way where everything is over here on the left and I do this here. It's from 2.7 of Blender. So go to texture, IES texture. I don't know where it just went. There it is. You'll have to find these, but you should be able to get them. So I have an IES texture pack and use something like this little, display one here is, oh, let me sort this by list or by name. So something like this little display one here might be cool. So let's see what this looks like. Oh, got to put the factor here after it loads. Got to put the factor right here into the strength. Come on. Let me turn off the world strength really quick. There's a lot of bounces going on in here. See, it's that Boolean is not. I don't know. Maybe it is working. It's just very slow at getting. Maybe it is working. Let's see. Oh man, this is like really slow going. One thing I did notice is like you see this here. Like I don't know what's causing that. This big giant amorphous blob in the rendered view. I think that that has to do with. Wait, no, that's that. But here's this thing here. I think that might have to do with one of these things. Yeah. So did you see that micro displacement? I don't know if that's an add-on or something, but maybe that's causing an issue. I don't know because I don't have the same stuff in mind, and I can see now that I don't think that Boolean is working anymore. Let's see. I don't think it is. So I'm going to use Bool tools really quick to grab this piece here. Grab this piece here. And I have Bool tools, so it's looks like this. You make a brush difference, and then there we go. Okay. So anyway, what I was trying to talk about is this IES light, and the IES lights tend to project lighting a lot more accurately. So if you're doing ray tracing, I would say, and you're doing these interior things with these light things, make sure it's on point. And you can see it's projecting the light down. That might be a little bit wide. Let me see if I can find a more defined one. So let's try this one. These might be a little bit too harsh. But you can see like how it's projecting that light. It looks like it's coming down like that, and then it's sort of like softly going off the sides. So you're going to get a little bit more of a realistic approach to your uh, lighting by doing something like this. Are you using glass on this? I think, yeah, you're using, let me see here. If this is glass, yeah, so if you're using anything that's actually refracting glass, I would say you want this to be actually not, you don't actually want these to be visible. Let me see here. Where are these guys? V-ray light. So yeah, again, I'm not sure what you're using in some of this stuff here, so you're gonna have to forgive me. I'm not 100%. I'm just gonna get rid of those. Oh, those were frames. Okay. Uh-oh. Come on. Okay. So that's fine. Window glass, transmission, and so there's a couple tricks you can do with this glass. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. I'm just finding things here and there. So I'm going to turn the world back up. So here's the thing with glass when you're doing interior stuff. A refraction, which it seems like you have here, you're going to be basically creating a large problem when it comes to the actual uh, rendering, because it requires a lot of tracing to do stuff that goes through glass with refracted light. So what I would recommend doing is making these completely like see-through. So making them like that so that they actually don't refract anything. Or what you can do is this. You can add a layer weight. So you add a layer weight here. And what you'll do is you'll go to a color ramp here, and we'll want to use that to actually control the alpha. So the idea is that we want it to be that the more you get to an angle, you can see the reflection, and then the more straight on, the more it's like see-through, if that makes sense. Um, so I don't know if this is actually going to work for this. I've used this before. I don't do a lot of interior arc with Windows, architectural visualizations with Windows. I usually just make it to where you can't see them because they cause these issues. Ah, I think we want to go this way, actually. Yeah, there we go. That's what we want. Yeah, so we want something like that. So it should be more transparent now. There we go. Then we get to the very edge. You see where it reflects and then not, reflection and then not. So let's get out of this mode and see if that helps at all. Yeah, so it will calculate faster because of that, because it's not having to calculate all those refractions going into the room. So you can see it's already showing us the image a lot faster without all of those extra caustics and stuff like that. So, and of course, if you were shooting this from a more extreme angle, we will see that reflected, the reflections in the window, but it's not as it's like more clear here. You could throw some dirt on the window if you wanted to see it and put it in, the like basically mix your principled with a different shader to have a um, like a alpha channel dirt smear sort of thing if you wanted it to be a little bit more obvious that there were windows there. but a lot of times people turn off the glass of the windows because it takes a long time to render. It makes it very, very noisy. So that's one thing that you could do. Um, so hopefully these ideas helped you out. I would say in a nutshell, number one, bake out your textures. Number two, you want to. I would not recommend using the experimental stuff because it will very often, at least in my experience, cause issues. Um, number whatever I'm on, I forgot. Check this boolean here and make sure that it's not that. That's your irradiance volume. The boolean that you have right here, make sure that that's actually working. And I would use bool tools because you can create a boolean brush like this, and you can move this sucker around and it will continue to make that boolean effect, and you don't have to have like you don't have to make extra modifiers and stuff like that. So it just kind of does it automatically. If you do the audio boolean, it bakes it in kind of like automatically, and you can control Z to delete. But the brush boolean, you can kind of like move it around still. Then make your glass transparent for the most part and use a layer weight to make it to where it doesn't reflect or refract the light, so you can have a less noisy scene that's rendered. And just a personal note, I would try to use the IES lights. Find some. There are a lot of free IES light packs that you can get online. I would try and use that and put these in here, even if it's daytime outside, because it looks really, really neat and it adds a little bit of polish to your scene. So I think that's it. Let me know if you have any questions or if you still run into problems. Um, when you're talking about, previewer versus rendering, a lot of things can happen in between the two, especially I've seen with Eevee. Oh, and the last thing that I talked about, but I forgot to um, say again, depth of field, it doesn't necessarily work with Eevee. So, you know, um, you might want to check that out. Uh, See if you can turn off depth of field, render it out, see if that works, and if it does, if that seems to be what the issue was, try and use the defocus node with a color ramp and a normalize for your depth channel, and see if that works. And you can animate this too. Like let's say you do a camera push in or something, you can animate these positions for each of these and the colors. So see, it says insert keyframe here. So you can animate this stuff as if you were animating the defocus effect on a camera. So just FYI, I did that on the more recent statue comparisons video that I did, because the Eevee defocus is just crap or something. I don't know. It just doesn't work for me, at least. So hopefully this helps you out. I'm going to try and post this on the YouTube channel on private and give you the link. I might want to make this public with a different edit, if you're okay with it, because this is your session and I can give you credit, just so that it might help out other people. And let me know if that's okay. If it's not, that's totally fine. Just let me know.